I'm just gonna start calling you Mr. Sophistication.
Well, I do have my snidely mustache drawn on today, so that's nice. And I'm sweaty, and I got a top hat on.
And that's like every day with you, which is great. So
Right. Always with the top hat.
yeah. So today, Screamers, we're back with another episode where we try and figure out how to make our way in the world while facing all kinds of adversity. We're talking about the latest Fort Worth Film Club screening, Real Women Have Curves, as well as discussing more Cassavetes, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, and Opening Night. And like you said earlier, these are really kind of low-key, enjoyable.
Right, yeah. They're light in a Disney Channel kind of way. It's like, you just pop them on, you bounce in wherever you want, and you're fine. You're unchanged after you see it.
Right. There's no tension.
There's no emotional
at
heartbreak or, yeah. Right.
No, nothing. I'm never on the edge of my seat or sort of like looking away from what's going on the screen.
I do feel like we should be watching this in like one of those sunken living rooms with shag carpeting and about 6 cigarettes going at any given time.
Different ashtrays around the house.
Right. Nothing to drink but bourbon or some sort of gimlet, just at the ready.
Right. Really, no more than 2 ingredients in any drink, right?
Right. There's milk in the house, but that's only for White Russians. It's basically...
And for upset stomachs. It really is just heavy cream.
Yeah, the freezer's got ice and vodka in it, and the refrigerator's got another pack of cigarettes and Pepto-Bismol and last night's Chinese takeout.
I knew a girl who used to keep her cash behind her vodka in the icebox.
Well,
That's... It made sense.
Whatever makes you feel better about...
You can get a 20, it's behind the vodka. What?
Your financial situation.
Yeah, I know. No one looked there, so...
I wouldn't think about it. Yeah, so no, I mean, these are just... I don't know if we do ourselves a very good favor of watching. We haven't chosen filmmakers that have easy films to watch and then watching them in quick succession. There's just nothing light about any of these films, and they're all challenging to the degree of having to pay attention, to having to be mentally engaged in them, to be straining to hear the dialogue. These films are unforgiving. They don't give you anything. Like, so you've got to figure out, like, you don't want to watch this with a spouse who's always saying, "Who's that guy?" Or "What did that man say?" Or "Wait a minute, back it up." Like, what happened there? I don't understand.
Is that how you watch these films?
No, I don't. These aren't movies that I'm watching with my significant other. We're currently in the middle of a binge of Veronica Mars, which is in and of itself its own challenge.
Okay, wait. I need to stop you because we did this like a few years ago. I know that Veronica Mars is the hero of her own show, but man, I do not like her very much. I want to, but God, she doesn't seem like a very good friend.
No, she is very much a user and kind of she's much of kind of abuser too. I mean, like, she runs roughshod. She definitely, once she got raped, of course, and you find out, I guess you do actually find out in season 2 that it actually was a rape. Right. And that anyway, once that happens,
she was roofied, and it was, yeah.
Right. She was roofied, and her boyfriend slept with her, but he also thought that they were brother and sister at the time, which turns out they weren't. But then in season 2, you find out that she was also raped by Cassidy Casablancas, spoiler alerts, but and he gave her chlamydia. It was a long dormant
right.
case of chlamydia. Anyway, yeah, no, she's not a good person, and like everyone around her, like especially her boyfriends. Especially the cop, the guy who ended up playing Max Greenfield, who ended up being on The New Girl,
right.
Got to start out on Veronica Mars. He was such a nice guy to her. I mean, obviously he was too old for her, but he was such a nice guy to her. She just completely used that relationship.
There is like no way to talk about this show and the relationships without like realizing the toxicity around them, like as we're talking about them.
Right. I mean, like her friendship with Wallace is completely one-sided. I mean, granted, she does cut him down, but only out of just out of a sense of
spite for everyone else.
Well, right, and also kind of a connectedness to being an outsider and herself feeling ostracized, which. As you go through the show, you realize that she's not nearly as ostracized as she makes herself out to be.
She wouldn't want us to believe.
Right. And also Neptune, California is a town of about 40 people. Like, it's always surprising to me that they introduce people that they don't know in the show. Like, occasionally people will come up and
how do you not know them, right?
Right.
Well, and Hector's from the wrong side of the tracks, but you're like, there are no tracks in this town.
Right. Yeah, he must be stealing the same cars over and over and over again. Or from outside of Neptune, I guess. But
also, I mean, how easy is it to sort of cut down Hector? And not in the literal sense of like Wallace being cut down, but just Hector becomes sort of like a punching bag for all of these people, like the one Latin kid in town.
I know, right?
Just
all of
shit.
the Latin kids are. I mean, this show is not progressive at all. Of course, it's produced by Joel Silver. You know, it's not. Because we weren't expecting it to be the paramount of virtue here. But like every Latin kid in the school is in a gang. You know, the one black kid, or the only black kids you ever see. And the one main black character is also a basketball player.
Right.
Everyone else just plays soccer and is rich, you know, and like all the white kids are rich. So
like a typical sort of American suburb.
Right.
How do we get on Veronica Mars? It doesn't matter.
We were just talking about, I don't watch Cassavetes with my wife. I just watch Veronica Mars.
Watch Veronica Mars.
It makes
Do you
me
have these conversations about Veronica Mars with your wife?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right, good. Okay.
There's a really good rewatch podcast for Veronica Mars. I don't know the name of it. Okay. We just started getting into it, but one of the women on it they're very smart and funny, and one of them is British, so that adds an extra level of like air of fanciness to it, right?
Yeah. Well, you really know what you're talking about with that accent.
The one thing I like about Veronica Mars is I like how shitty all of the characters are with their quips and their dialogue. Mm-hmm. The dialogue, it's Gilmore Girls level dialogue without the guilt of me watching a show about the Gilmore Girls. I don't have to have that level of creepy. It's still a little creepy because they're high school, but now season 3, she's in Neptune College or whatever. For some reason, she didn't end up going to Stanford. I don't know there's a whole lot of things lost in translation there, but a lot of it's not explained. It's okay. It's like a lot of Veronica Mars in between seasons is a lot like a Cassavetes film.
True.
There's just a lot of stuff that just kind of like they skip over and they just expect you to catch up.
Things just happen. Right? Things just happen. Right?
But yeah, no, Veronica Mars sucks. I mean, like the show's great. She is a terrible person.
You brought in the Gilmore Girls, and one of the stars is, what's her name? Alexis Bledel, who was also in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants with America Ferrera, who was in Real Women Have Curves. You see how I did that? You see how we Kevin that segue out.
We Kevin Baconed our way over there.
Yes, we 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Wait, could we? No.
I want you to see me. See, this is what I look like.
Que bonita. Tomorrow you come to work with us in the factory.
What?
If we don't help your sister, who else is going to?
What do you mean not going to college?
Anna has an appetite for life.
Are you going to be working here full time?
Just until I find a better job.
Oh, me too. I'm just working here until I win the lottery.
For love.
A nice night tonight.
I guess this is good night.
For ideas.
A man wants a virgin.
You're so old-fashioned. A woman has thoughts, a mind of her own.
Mine? Thoughts?
But not everyone appreciates where it's taking her.
Anna is going to go to college, but not now.
We are a family, and we intend to stay that way.
This is a sweatshop.
I'm grateful for what Amma has taught me, and I'm proud of what I do. Cosa.
Jimmy, does your mom understand you?
You'll never fit into that one. It's a size 7.
It's like she hates me. She thinks I'm fat and I'm ugly and God knows what.
You're not fat. You're beautiful. You lost your virginity, didn't you?
Tom, you're imagining things.
I can tell. ¿Por qué no te diste tu valor?
You would say that, wouldn't you? I'm not your baby anymore.
What is wrong with your sister?
Si te quieres ir, lárgate.
Girls nowadays think they know so much.
It's so hot in here.
Look at you. The two of you should lose weight.
This is who we are, Mama.
I look like a cow.
Mostly shut up.
Look at my hips.
You want to see cellulite? Here we go.
Hannah, excuse me, ladies. You want stretch marks? Estela,
Ladies,
look how beautiful we are.
Who cares what we look like?
Let it all hang out.
You could be beautiful. Stop it. You're overweight too. So why should I listen to you?
Real women have curves.
Hannah, don't eat the flan.
Anyway,
We
here's-
could, but it would
we
take us a
could, but
minute.
let's not do that. Here's a real brief plot line of Real Women Have Curves. In East Los Angeles, an 18-year-old struggles between her ambitions of going to college and the desires of her domineering mother to force her to get married, have children, and oversee the small, rundown family-owned textile factory.
Yeah.
That was weird.
No,
I don't know. I feel like I read that weird.
No, but I mean, it's accurate either way.
Okay.
Yeah, a young coming to age, a coming of age story for, you don't get a lot of like middle-aged coming of age stories.
But why not? Like we could, right?
Outside of like Jonathan Winters on Mork and Mindy, you don't get a lot of that.
Okay. maybe we should advocate for more of those.
Yeah, I think what
the world needs is like more like white middle-aged male coming of age stories.
Right. And where do they finally
Well, I mean, we just saw Oppenheimer, so that's
this is true.
that counts.
Yeah, directed by a Latina director, written by a Latina screenwriter, playwright, Patricia Cardoso, and Josefina Lopez is the writer. She wrote it when she was 18 as a stage play, shopped it around for a few years, worked on the script with a gentleman named George Lavu, I think how you pronounce his name, I'm sure. And then, yeah, they were able to secure financing and became a Sundance Audience Award winner and some acting awards for America Ferrera and Lupe Ontiveros. I was going to say Oliveros, but yeah, it's Ontiveros, who was the bad guy in Selena and a bunch of other things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh, I didn't know that.
So yeah, I mean, like, what are your impressions of Real Women Have Curves?
So I am not a huge fan of feel-good movies.
Right.
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 If you didn't know that. but I think this is a very well-made, well put together movie. And I think it does a lot more than just, oh, this is how like this woman goes to college. Right. I think it's doing a lot of work with body positivity, with female sexual empowerment, and also looking at generation divide and cultural divides as well. I think it's a good, solid film. Is it one of my go-tos? No, but it's good.
Yeah, I will agree with you. I think it is a good, solid film. I do think the representation portion of it is important. I do think the fact that it's weird that looking back on this and reading about it, that really in 2002, when this gets released, that we're still in the age of Latin films or Latin characterizations. I mean, Veronica Mars is 2006 and 2007. And they're still talking about, I mean, this is a TV show where the main Latin character is a hoodlum. You know, he's a gangbanger essentially.
He's a petty criminal.
Well, he runs the PCHers, right? So I did not expect us to talk this much about Veronica Mars today.
He does run there, but like, he's never packing her gun.
No.
Never doing. They're never doing drive-bys.
He's definitely anti-selling drugs.
Yeah. He never crip walks on anybody.
He just the Williams sisters,
and Snoop on the Super Bowl.
So, I think it's weird to me that we were still in the era of these guys are the top button on. I mean, they're just they're this characterization that wasn't normalized families. I mean, that you weren't like George Lopez show wouldn't, not that that's necessarily the benchmark for, Latin representation in media, but it was probably one of the first television shows that featured and predominantly featured a Latin family, if I'm not forgetting something. So it's weird to me that we had not really progressed to a point where we're having Latin families in these types of movies, or we're not depicting Latin families in as much as not showing them in a gang-ridden or a lower class environment. And these are definitely working class citizens. These are blue collar citizens. But they're not like, and yeah, you see them working for rich white people. I mean, essentially, because they're making dresses for Bloomingdale's, and her father is working, lawn care for mansions and things like that. But it looks like he runs his own company kind of thing, that he's in part of it. So it's a nice, I guess, slice of life where we're not having to tell that story, right? Where, her sister is struggling, but her sister is struggling mainly because
capitalism.
Capitalism, yes, and she's struggling because she doesn't realize, her own worth and what her product is worth. So the middleman is basically taking out all of her profits, and she's struggling because she has a lack of confidence in herself and in her ability. And her, you can chalk that up to whatever you want it to be, being a female in the business world, or again, the story that's being told, where she's shy about asking for things that she needs. She doesn't ask for an advance on the dresses. She doesn't ask her father for a loan to pay the rent, to pay the electricity bills, to get him over the hump. These things that would easily be done. And Anna is the kind of voice of the next generation, not to go all Pepsi on us, but where she can kind of bridge, because she's been exposed to, for lack of a better term, these white people who don't have these same sort of problems and same sort of hangups, and they're not they don't have that same sort of weight to carry, in this environment. She's been exposed to that. So
and we get this from Jimmy, her kind of love interest in the story. So Anna takes how many buses to get to Beverly Hills High School, right? And Jimmy's got a crush on her, and at some point, Jimmy's like, "Hey, man, you need to go to Europe and get a new perspective. Man, this place is too easy. They give you everything. I mean, from the cars, the grades," and she's just like, cool story, right?
Right.
But so, yes, she has seen this. So she has seen people sort of speak up, stand up, act like they own the joint, right? Her older sister has pretty much just been belittled by everyone around her, right? All the time. And so
including her mother.
I think especially her mother, right? And so she doesn't, even though she is in charge, even though she owns the factory, nobody really pays her the kind of respect that you think that would kind of accord.
Right. And she doesn't really take it either. No. I mean, like, she doesn't demand it. So everyone kind of walks over her throughout the film. And it's interesting to me that this was written, the original stage play is written for her from her perspective. Now, Josefina Lopez grew up in a family very similar to the one that's depicted on screen. They did work in a factory, a sewing factory. So I understand I understand if I'm an 18-year-old writing this story, and I don't want to necessarily write an autobiographical story as I'm 18 years old, especially when dealing with, if she, and I'm assuming that she also dealt with those body issues as well, to a certain extent anyway, to not put Anna as the protagonist of the stage play. It makes more sense to make it Estella. Although I have a hard time believing that an 18-year-old is telling that story well, to be honest, because she doesn't have that experience. She could be tangentially exposed to it, but I don't believe she has the experience to really be able to dive deep into that story and to really try to figure out the nuance. And I think that's where this movie, and I hate to be the guy who talks about the negativity of any of this, but I think that's where this movie kind of doesn't really reach that next level of greatness, is that it is told from an 18-year-old's perspective, and it is kind of a simplistic story. And I do think that it focuses a little too much on the representation than it really, the standout aspects of it to me are the body positivity and the the sexual ownership of a young Latina girl growing up in a Catholic religious overbearing, family structure where she's got generations at home with her. She's sharing a room with an older sister who's in her 30s. And
she's 29.
She's 29, almost in her 30s. I just mentioned that the representation wasn't there in 2002, but I do think the body positivity and the ownership of her own sexuality are much more progressive themes than showing Latinas or a Latinx family in kind of a normalized situation that you would normally see for what we've seen forever with white families on screen.
Right. And I agree with you that the body positivity, I mean, this wasn't something we saw very often in films. And I went back and looked to see kind of what movies were out there in 2002. And there weren't a whole lot that were dealing with this, like, if any. Right. And so.
Well, and it was mentioned, like, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No,
it was mentioned Muriel's wedding at the screening last night. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like that's, I don't want to ever talk negatively about someone else's opinion, but I also kind of feel like that movie, when we're talking about, who was in Muriel's wedding? That wasn't Toni Collette. That was Toni? Was that Toni? I'm thinking Toni Collette. And then what was the one with
Ricky Lake? Wasn't there one with?
Ricky Lake was. I don't know if there was a body positivity movie. Who was the girlfriend in Good Will Hunting?
Minnie Driver.
Minnie Driver. There was another movie about Minnie Driver.
Toni Collette was Muriel's wedding.
Toni Collette was Muriel's wedding. And then there was another movie about Minnie Driver kind of being heavy set.
Yeah, it was the Maeve Binchy novel.
Yes.
No,
yeah.
I'm serious.
No, I'm laughing because I can't pull the name of it.
It was Friends, Circle of Friends.
Yes. And I feel like that's a little disingenuous because, one, Toni Collette and Minnie Driver are... And not to say that America Ferrera or anybody in this other movie are not normal size, but these women are not what you would normally. I mean, yes, by Hollywood zero standards, Toni Collette and Muriel and Minnie Driver are not Kristen Bell, right?
Right.
To fully always go back to Veronica Mars.
Everything goes back to Veronica.
A woman who has to wear a size 12 is not abnormal or would even be considered. Again, dancing around these terminologies. Look, the body positivity of this movie feels more genuine. These are women who, are, they're dealing with they're dealing with making dresses that clearly wouldn't fit them. But even again, this feels like more genuine, and it also feels more brave in a sense. And I hate to use that terminology when we talk about women who are showing their bodies, who are just normal people. But I mean, especially in 2002, especially for a 17-year-old, 18-year-old actress to do that type of role, I think it's. I mean, I thought that was that whole sequence is really powerful.
Yeah. I think brave is a perfectly way to phrase it, because especially at that time. I mean, well, not even just at that time, but I think even now we have such a strict kind of standard of what we think passes for beautiful. And for someone to stand up and say, fuck that, I'm going to take my clothes off, you're going to deal with it.
Right.
I think is extremely brave, especially when you imagine what could happen to young actors when they do something like that. Right. And how they could be kind of, thrown off to the side.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it today.
No,
especially in the era of an active internet, I would not want to do it today.
Right. So, but I mean, yeah. I mean, I think brave is exactly the right word, and I don't think it's not brave like Dove soap brave. And I don't.
Right.
And I don't mean to like throw shade on that campaign, but it's still like meant to sell.
Right.
A whole bunch of soap, and it's being promoted by a giant corporation, right? Unilever is not small.
Right.
Like this woman who's writing a stage play about this stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think it is brave.
Yeah.
And it's her first role. I mean, it's America Ferrera's first role.
Right.
You could see a different world. This goes bad. She never,
Right. Well, and it's interesting because Cardosa, Lopez, they struggle. This does well, but Ferrera is really the only one that kind of comes out and is able to like take this and go to Sisters of Traveling Pants and a couple of other, these other roles where she can kind of become a star. Yeah, right. So Lopez and Ferrera basically have to kind of continually prove themselves. Cardosa goes to TV pretty fast right after this. And I think Ava DuVernay gives her a shot directing. I forget which series it is, but and so she's been steadily directing. But I mean, there's not been like they're not lining up. They're not Greta Gerwiging up to give her films. And I think that's look. I'm not going to come out here and say that Real Women Have Curves is, from a technical perspective or a directing perspective, all that ambitious. But I mean, I would definitely think to be the ability to coherently and to manage a budget, to coherently tell a story. If you're winning awards at Sundance, I think that says you should get another chance at a feature film.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little surprising that she never did another feature, did she? I was looking at this the other night, and I'm just going through it now.
Yeah, no, it's all
a bunch
TV
of
movies.
Shorts, and then it's like one
TV series
feature, and then it was I thought and I don't mean this in a negative way, even though I would usually use this in a negative way, but it's a very competent film.
Yeah, no,
right?
It is,
and it doesn't get in its own way, and I think that's really important.
And that's not anything to shake a stick at when it's your first film either. Mm-hmm. And if you look at like Karen Kusama, who directed Girl Fight in 2001, the year right before this, I mean, she fights battles as well, but she fights battles in a different sense because the movies that she does, like Jennifer's Body, they get kind of misinterpreted, they get misadvertised, and then they have to fight an uphill battle and things die off for a little while until she gets another chance. But at least she was getting other chances. And I'm not saying that and the reason I mentioned those two is because they're mainly, they feature Latin actresses. It's kind of telling a Latin story. And they're similar time frames and similar budgets, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah, it's weird that Cordosa doesn't get another film put in her lap. Like somebody like Kimberly Pierce or Catherine Hardwicke, or these people who directed kind of these small independent similar films that and you could argue that Hardwicke and there's a little bit more of a hard nose to those films that they did, but like 13 and
right.
I'm trying to think Kimberly Pierce. I mean, you've got Boys Don't Cry, and so you've got a little bit more of a dramatic stint to them. But this again was a really well received film. You can kind of compare it to My Big Fat Greek Wedding in a kind of a sense
which came out in the same year, anyway.
Right? Yeah. Of kind of a crowd pleaser, and it's really bizarre that there wasn't kind of some more momentum behind this.
Yeah, I mean, because of that, because you're able to make a crowd pleasing movie about a Mexican family, right, and about a quote unquote overweight girl,
right, and yeah.
I mean, it is surprising that someone didn't go, wow, you could do that here, right? Here's $20 million, go make something else.
Right.
Here's 15, go make something.
Right. Yeah. You clearly have to have other stories there somewhere, but yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's too bad. I'm glad that they're still working, and I do think this is a this is a film that's clearly not made for you and I, right? I mean, this is not
sure, but
I do think this would be an important film to show to young people. And just to have that kind of, I do think again, that's what you have to show. I don't know. About,
I like how you say it's not for us because we're not young.
Right.
I mean, that's what I heard there. It's not for us. Show it to the young people.
Show it to the young people.
The youths.
Let them know how to. They're our future. We, not so much.
I believe that as well. I thought the discussion was good last night. I mean, last night, when you hear this, it'll be like 2 weeks later, but I did think the discussion last night was really good. I thought that the crowd was really engaged and engaging during that. So if you're listening and you were there, thank you. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's always good. It's always good to get new perspectives, and it's always good to, like I said, people bringing up their own experiences with their own upbringings and seeing themselves in the different characters. It's always fun.
It was great. Okay, so that's Real Women Have Curves. So go check it out. America Ferrera also giving a similar speech in Barbie this year, right? Playing a similar kind of role. But I mean, that is a nice kind of parallel between the two.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay. Cassavetes.
That's
I
good.
know. If you can hear the smattering of applause, it's because we are doing this live.
In front of a studio audience. Can we stop for a second? How the fuck was that ever a thing? How is that a thing that we ever did?
A live studio audience?
Yeah, like
I don't know. Did you go to any tapings?
no, of course not. I would have loved to have gone, but it seems like such a bizarre thing to do.
Oh, absolutely.
To like break down and to like also to kind of I don't know, pull the curtain back on the wizard a little bit to kind of show you how these things
to actively say, look at the man behind the curtain.
right, and see how all this stuff is made. It seems wildly dangerous to do it a lot of times. Also, and it doesn't do anything outside of what adding a laugh track already does, right? So like for the most part, I don't think people would really know the difference, right? Because Friends, not filmed in front of a live well, maybe it was.
I think it was, right?
Okay, who gives a shit? It was a terrible show. Like, the more I watch it, I can't go back to it anymore. Like, I mean, it was one of those ones it's always on like TBS or whatever. So it was easy to like pop on. I remember liking it so much when it first, but I really just because I was enamored with Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox and Phoebe. Who is named Lisa Kudrow in real life. But man, it's just not good.
No, it's terrible.
And like of the series that still hold up, which I think The Office holds up. I think that Cheers definitely holds up. I think Cheers is wildly progressive for the 80s. I think Taxi still holds up. I mean, there's a lot that I think I Love Lucy. I still love watching I Love Lucy.
Look, anything with Andy Kaufman holds up.
Yes, true.
And Tony Clifton.
I don't know what the fuck. Live studio audiences. I don't know, like I don't know what that would have gotten you, and I can't imagine why that was such a predominant thing for so long. I just remember, like, and obviously when Cheers was started, this episode was filmed in front of a live studio audience. Like, as we were supposed to like expect someone to yell out something from the crowd or whatever, or
fuck you, coach.
Right. And you didn't do it with dramas or like, I mean, it was just with comedies. And so just to get that laugh, which again, I don't think, one of my point was watching Friends is that I don't think that you would really, and I would imagine anything that was written with the live studio audience that didn't get the laugh that they thought it should, got it supplemented in, right? Yeah. I mean, so like, I don't believe that an audience sitting at home would know the difference between a live studio audience laughter versus canned laughter out of the box there. So, and like take something like Big Bang Theory, which I don't believe was filmed in front of a live studio audience. I don't know.
Because there would be no laughs.
Right, because that show's fucking terrible.
So bad. Also, how do those cats eat out every single night? And they're not 300 pounds, man.
Because they're
eating like Cheesecake Factory stuff. Like, I mean, this is like not good food that they're eating, right? And also they're sedentary.
Right, yeah, they're definitely not active. They're not exercising a lot.
At all.
It's not your typical nerds, right? I mean, it's
nerds with I mean, look, not that nerds don't have metabolism. I'm just saying. Right?
Maybe they had some sort of scientific way to like.
I mean, cocaine was made in a lab,
right?
So
yes,
sure.
Yes, they were all doing heavy amounts of cocaine.
God.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail us, but that came up the other day in my head in all these conversations that I have in my head. Of how that ever was a reality.
Why did we do that?
Like, why was that a thing?
Do that?
Right.
Well, and even like the people on the outside of a glass window, like looking in. So like the Today Show, and like we talked about Total Request Live,
right?
Where I just saw a clip from that where a woman like fan from the crowd threatened to like beat up Carson Daly because he was like making fun of, I don't know if it was Britney Spears or somebody. He was just like, she's like, I'll kill you. He's like, whoa.
Well deserved, for sure.
Not kidding. Right. Oh no, 100%. Yeah.
Alas, she didn't make it happen, which is what I was going to say. This is good podcasting right here. Cassavetes, Killing of a Chinese Bookie.
It's all right, Vince. It'll pick up. Have a big night.
This guy does the whole thing. So we got, he choreographs it, he stages it, he does the whole...
Don't exaggerate. I do the best I can. Cosmo. I owe you money, I'll pay you.
Just step outside.
This guy owes us money. He's got to pay.
His name is Lean. That is a bookie. Chinese bookie.
Wait a minute. I think I understand.
You can't shoot me. How can you? I'm a star.
Let's get into it.
Let's jump into the killing of a Chinese bookie. Now, before I give you the brief rundown, it's very brief. Did you watch the 76 or 78 version?
I watched both of them, but...
Wait, you watched both of them for this podcast, or you've seen both of them?
I watched both of them for... I mean, I've seen both of them, but I watched both of them for this podcast as well.
Well, that's more than I did.
Did you watch any of them? I guess it's...
Oh, no, of course, yes. Yeah.
I'm just going to wing it.
No, I'm just going to...
So, like, there's...
I've never seen it, but I imagine there's a bookie.
Right, there's this...
probably Chinese.
There's this Chinese guy who likes books a lot.
Yeah, so he's a reader. He's a reader, man. I mean,
well, the title is a misnomer. He's not actually a bookie.
Right.
They might actually kill a Chinese bookie in all the gunshots that went off, but this guy was not only a bookie, at least.
Right. No, he was a big deal. He was a big guy. Anyway, so a proud strip club owner, Cosmo Vitelli, is forced to come to terms with himself as a man when his gambling addiction gets him in hot water with the mob, who offer him only one alternative: to kill a Chinese bookie. Look, we're going to talk about opening night after this, but these two films, for me at least, seem to be kind of the most meta films of Cassavetes' career, right? I mean,
yeah, this is his Wes Craven Scream. This is him like pulling back the
right. I mean, it's very much. I mean, this one, it's a gangster film in name only, right? It's Cassavetes sort of using this as a framing device, but it's so much about, like, how do you stay working as an artist? Because Cosmo thinks he's an artist, right? Ben Gazzara, as the owner of this strip club, thinks he's an artist. He's not just parading naked women on stage. He's choreographing these shows. He's writing these shows, right? This is his art. Right? And these mobsters are the studio system, right? These mobsters are the guys who come in and try to take away your art, or try to commodify your art, or try to only talk about money when all you want to do is make shit, right?
Right. I think it's just to kind of lay it out. Bookie does not really work for me on a whole. I think this is Cassavetes' tired. Like, this is his most tired film. Like, I feel like he is like spent from A Woman Under the Influence and trying to hawk that forever. I do think that he wanted to get this film out because I think he wanted to go back into the studio system to help them distribute these films. And I think that really, like, even though it was highly profitable for him, I do think that it was very tiring for him to spend 18 months to 2 years essentially driving A Woman Under the Influence to each theater to show it. And so this was a movie like, I can't take 3 to 4 years to make another film. I've got to make this now. So while I'm hot on the heels of A Woman Under the Influence, so that someone will take the distribution cost away from me, because the distribution cost at this time was becoming so cost prohibitive that he couldn't really afford it. It was like $250,000 to $1 million to market and to print and to do in the US. So like this movie, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, does nothing. Opening night does nothing in the US. But it's huge in Europe. Right.
Yeah, it's gone in a week.
And so to me, this, while it is, I do appreciate that aspect of it. I feel like him trying to take a story, and he talked to Scorsese about this and was like, he had been meeting with him on Mean Streets and helping Scorsese. Mm-hmm. He was basically the one to tell Scorsese, make Mean Streets as long as you want to make Mean Streets. Don't cut it down to a 90-minute film. And Scorsese was like, fine, all right, that sounds good. I'm glad someone told me to do that because now I can make Mean Streets the way that I want to make it. I think it shows in the fact that there is a 76 and a legit 78 version that we can see. That Cassavetes was like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I think he was disconnected from the material in a sense. And I also don't think that Cassavetes does stories well when he's the main focus of the story. Like where he is the primary piece. Like this, like if you go back to Too Late Blues and you go back to this, these are clearly stories about Cassavetes telling stories about Cassavetes, right? Sure. This is better than Too Late Blues.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think this meanders way too much.
This is why I like it so much.
I think look, it does set itself up for failure to begin with, because you're thinking, okay, you hear the synopsis. This is a strip club owner who gets involved with gangsters and they got to kill a guy to pay off a debt. Yeah, okay. That's 2 hours and 30 minutes later, motherfucker. Right? And you've gone through a lot of shit that had nothing to do with that.
But this is how the world works.
No.
And this is why,
no, go ahead. Yeah, I get that. But
like,
yeah,
this is what something that I really like about Cassavetes is how much he seems interested in how other people work and how other people work within the world as he sees it, the real world as he sees it. So as he's examining how these people work, he's at the same time examining how he works, right? So it's understanding these other people in the world to sort of, in a way, understand himself and also give us, the viewer, a different way to understand ourselves in this. I mean, I think a lot of times we can look at movies and detach them from reality. I don't think you can do that with a Cassavetes film. I think that you're always there, and he's always saying, this is why this matters to this. This is why this matters out there, right? So that's why I like the meandering, because there's all this stuff going on that has nothing to do with other things, but that's how my fucking day goes so many times, man. I mean,
I do think, well, this movie kicks into gear when he gets to the card game. I mean, there's a lot of look. I think it's fun when, and so we're going to be talking about the 78. We can touch on the 78 version, but we're going to be talking about the 76 version.
Yeah.
So this is the 2 hour and 14 minute version rather than the 148 minute version. Right. And so you open up and he's basically paying off another bookie.
He's paying off a loan shark.
He's paying off a loan shark, right? Yeah. And then he's doing a show at their club, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm going to stop for a second because I think how he talks to the loan shark completely establishes this guy's character, right? And who Cosmo thinks he is and who we understand him to be, because he walks in with this stack of cash to pay this loan shark, to pay off his debt, and he's already got this swagger, right? This braggadocio, and we're like, oh, this guy doesn't get himself at all. Right. I mean, here's what you don't do. You don't talk shit to the guy you just borrowed a ton of money from, even if you're paying the loan back. And he even says to this guy, like, Marty, I never want to see you again.
Right.
And Marty's like, hey, if you need me, you know where to find me.
Right. And it's kind of like you're going a little too far. Dude.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like I'll let you talk to me this way, but
you know what? I'll probably see you soon. Right? but I mean, I love this opening in that we see immediately that this guy is just in over his head all the time.
Right. Yeah, and with everything, right?
Everything.
And then so when a gangster comes to his club and like professes how much he loves it, and how, and this is Seymour Cassel coming up with all of these girls and all these people coming into this strip club. talking about Mr. Satisfaction and sophistication. So what was the other name that she mistakenly gave him? There was when she was talking about it. Yeah, that's the reason I said Satisfaction was really fucked it up. But yeah, Mr. Sophistication starts talking about, because Cassell's looking for Mr. Sophistication at the beginning of it anyway. Mm-hmm. So they all go in and they talk about this other club that Cassell's got and come over to it. Ships Ahoy, card club.
Yeah,
and so. Gazzara goes to the card club and gets himself, and he makes this whole show of it, right? Because Cassell came in with a whole entourage. He goes off and gets all of his girls, and he gets them all corsages, and of course he's got his girlfriend, but he's got all of the. He goes to each of the girls' house and picks them up in a limo, and so all these girls come dressed to the nine for this card game, and they all sit. They're
just bored the entire
right. They're
time.
bored. They're bored. They're drinking. They're smoking. But he's pissed off because they don't have chairs for them. So he makes a big to do about them getting chairs at his table, and he goes through and you don't really. I mean, in typical Cassavetes fashion, you don't see any of the card game. Right, you hardly see anything happen in this movie whatsoever. Like
you even see aftermath.
Right, none of the action actually gets shown on screen, which is to his credit. It's really a cool aspect of this movie. But he. So he's up against it in a hand, and he's pot deficient, and he wants to write a check. He wants another line of credit. He says he'll back up his credit with his check with credit cards. He's got a gold card, and so after all this happens, of course he loses, right? And he's going up to make do with his debt, and like there's a whole so I'm getting this confused a little bit. Is there a progression of people in the 76 version that go through the credit aspect?
Well, they're all like in the same room.
Right, but they specifically, in the 78 version, they specifically spend time with this woman that who is, she's trying to hawk a watch or some sort of pice of jewelry. Yeah,
right. No, they come in. So there's like other people trying to settle debts, gambling debts. Yeah. But I don't remember. I think there's only like a couple.
So they expand that sequence in the 78 version.
Okay.
And kind of like it's to set up tension in the sense of, because in the 78 version, and I apologize for bouncing back. There's no way.
Yeah.
In the 78 version, you don't meet Cassell. Like he goes, Cassell is you don't meet Cassell outside of the club.
Right.
We meet, and like in a lot of the sequence of the paying off the initial loan shark is cut down too. Like you just pay. Yeah. They go into the club needs to be picked. It'll pick up because it's on a Sunday night.
Right. That's where it starts. And
Right. And so the Cassell action of coming to the club and kind of boosting the ego. So it really then, when you go around and pick up all the girls, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense of why he's doing that.
Right.
We cut to the club, so we cut to the card games. So the card game is pretty quick and all of this happens. But what's great about it is when Gazzara's got to make up when Cosmo's got to make up his debt, and they look at look at the credit card, the gold card, and it's a gas card.
Yeah.
What I love about the mob in this movie is they make him sign actual forms. They got like 2 forms in like triplicate that he's got to sign to like sign over his.
They have actual like
debt.
legal documents. It's not just like in a notebook.
And they apologize for it too. They're like, "I'm sorry, I don't want to be so formal. I hate to be formal. But we need you to sign something saying you're going to pay you $23,000."
But that makes them even more sinister. I think. I mean, What I love about Cassell in this role is that when you first meet him, and he's just like, "Oh, hey, you own this joint, don't you? Oh, man, you're great. This place is the best." He looks at the girls. He's like, "Hey, this guy owns it. This is awesome." He's like kind of goofy and, you can tell he thinks he's kind of a big shot and Cosmo's impressed, but he still comes off as is sort of like a mix of Chet from Faces and Moskowitz, right?
Right.
Kind of big and but then we meet him again and he is so cool,
right,
and sort of calculating. And I mean,
well, you have to figure that he was setting him up from the jump, right? I mean, so we find out eventually that Cosmo's been set up, that they wanted his club all along, and they have him go kill this Chinese bookie, what they tell him is a Chinese bookie, to pay off his debt, because they basically send him in a massacre. They send him alone to this Chinese mafia safe house, basically, and
enclave,
right? Yeah. And like there's tons of guys there, and they expected him to get killed. They set him up with a terrible trap car that breaks down on the highway, right? So they come to his
Because of
club.
course it does.
Right. They come to his club and they're like, you know what? They proposition him at first and say, hey, we're going to let you pay off your debt. So you obviously, at this point, it's all been he's a patsy. This has all been set up. Or you at least get the impression that they do this all the time for people, that people get in hock with them and they make them go do things for them. And then he says, okay, I'll do it. He goes back to his club and he's like, you know what? I don't want to do it anymore. So they bring him outside and Carrie's there. And it's this is the one thing that when I'm watching this movie, I lament that Cassavetes didn't meet him earlier, didn't use him more. He's like, as good as he was in Minnie and Moskowitz, he's so fucking delicious in this movie. He's so good. He's so like ridiculously large and goofy looking and like just gangly, but so dangerous looking. He's so amazing in this movie.
He's like a walking contradiction, isn't he?
Well, and like when he's dressed in a blue blazer and a plaid blue shirt and like this god awful like multi-patterns tie. And they beat the shit out of Cosmo because they're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, come on outside. We're going to talk to you outside. Yeah. Basically, you don't want to pay your debt? That's fine. Just come outside. You're going to talk to us. And like all the gangsters are there and they rough him up and they immediately throw him in the car and say, hey, you're going to do this and you're going to do it right now.
And here's a map. Here's what you do. It's all written down. It's okay.
Right.
I love it. Cosmo, just look at the map. It's all there for you, right? It's just in the book. Follow the directions. I love that. But I love that aspect of that. Just how like, no, this is just, look, you've got a list of instructions.
Right.
Just do
Here's
that.
a recipe.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. And then, of course, it all just goes to shit. But.
Right. So they give him a gun. They give him a car. The car breaks down because they've hot wired a car. And they usually like, don't let the car die or stall because there's no keys. Right. It's all wires.
It's running on wires, yeah.
It breaks down in the middle of the highway. He almost gets killed. He runs to a payphone to call a taxi so he can get over to the hit. But in between that, he calls his club to make sure that the Paris Act is going off okay.
And this is what I love is that this is how invested he is, right? Again, like this is his entire reason for being. Right. And he's talking to the bartender and he's like, what number's on? He's like, what do you mean you don't know the number? You've been there for 8 years. Right? How do you not know? You watch this every night. How do you not know the numbers? But again, this how much he is invested and how little everyone else seems to be kind of around him.
Right.
Except for Mr. Sophistication.
Right. Who's really, he's pot committed for sure.
People come to see me. Is what he says later.
Right. So he goes and he kills a few people. He kills the actual who he thinks is the Chinese bookie. He's getting a bath and with a young girl and the most amazing naked boob telephone that ever has existed and is in one of the scenes. And he kills and he runs, but he realizes as he's running off, he goes back to his girlfriend's house. He realizes he's been shot as well. And then the rest of the film is him, like
bleeding out,
just basically bleeding out. The Flo comes over and Flo's
Carrie,
and basically says he's supposed to be there to take out Cosmo, but he's taking a liking to Cosmo at this point. So he just says, "Hey, my friend's in there. You deal with this." So Mort's like talking to him and basically saying, "Look, you could shoot me if you want." So basically Garza gets away from Mort. You think he might have shot him. You're not really sure. Nothing really happens on screen. You hear a car door slam, and then Cosmo goes back to the club. The show is not going on at the time, so like when he's not there, the club is completely in disarray.
There's a labor dispute.
Right. The crowd is pissed. The girls are pissed. He comes and gives them a heartwarming win one for the Gipper kind of speech.
Let's go team.
Right. And they all go out there and have a great time. And he goes outside and realizes he's still bleeding. He's bleeding through his coat jacket. And then the camera pans back into the club and the show must go on.
It's going on. And I really do like how something else that I love about Cassavetes is how there is never really an ending to his films. There isn't this definitive conclusion to the movies. Nothing gets sort of resolved, really. Nothing gets tied up. It's not a nice, pretty kind of America Ferrera walking in Times Square, right? As a newly discovered kind of subject and agent. It's just, even in like A Woman Under the Influence, they go back to sort of making up the bedroom, and we're like, this is all going to happen again, isn't it? It's just going to keep going. But I think this is one reason that like Cassavetes does so well in Europe. I mean, this feels much more like that kind of a film, like a film by a European director who are much more willing to let the ending just kind of sit there.
Right. I do appreciate the aspect of, if you take Cosmo as Cassavetes, this is, him mortgaging his house, basically, and always going back, the club being his films, and mortgage, and him always taking these risks of having to pay back somebody, pay back the bank, do whatever he can to make sure his art gets made.
Yeah.
And this kind of brashness around it all of him, this bravado of that he has to carry that allows him to still see himself as an artist. Because at the end of the day, Cassavetes was a middle-class guy. I mean, like it was, I mean, like, we like to think of all of these auteurs and these directors and actors and actresses as rich, kind of above it all, kind of like artistes. But this was just a guy who, had a Long Island home that that had kids at home and that acted to do his passion, which, makes that story the more beautiful of like him, like always struggling. And, always kind of fighting against it to get things done, and was talented enough and lucky enough in a lot of different ways to make it happen. But yeah, this wasn't a guy who, he made his movies made millions, but he still had to pay that out to everyone else. He still had to pay back a bank. He would take out $500,000 mortgages against his house to be able to pay off. Right. To make these films happen.
Or he's getting money from Falk, who he then has to sort of pay back as an investor anyway. Right. I mean, so, yeah. And I think that there was Gazzara told a story where they were in the limousine, in the limousine scene where he's got all the women and stuff, and he's going, to pick them all up at their door. And Cassavetes is running the camera. He's running the handheld camera. And so he's filming the scene, and after the scene, Cassavetes takes the camera down, and he's crying, right? Because Gazzara was like, up until that point, I couldn't get into this role. I couldn't figure it out. I was having no fun doing it until I saw that, and I understood that this was, John making a movie about him. And he was like, and then I got it. But yeah, I mean, I don't. The difference, I think, between Cosmo and Cassavetes is Cosmo is an idiot.
Well, I think Cosmo is self-destructive, right? I think this is a type of guy who, regardless of what level of success he was able to gather, right, he would consistently and constantly try to undermine himself. He doesn't go off from paying one loan shark to going directly into hawk with another without being a guy who's always kind of chasing that high, and that nothing is ever really good enough. And also, he's self-loathing, right? I mean, this is a guy who it kind of exists in this world because he feels like he's a piece of shit and kind of likes being that piece of shit, which you kind of get that Cassavetes did in a way too, right? I mean, like, I think these guys reveled in this idea of, like this blue collar, middle class, workman, like but still trying to be artists, kind of, I don't know, lifestyle that they've kind of painted for themselves. But also, he was a guy who liked to instigate and liked to
pick fights,
right? Yeah, get into shit with people in bars,
see what
right?
He could do.
Right.
Yeah. Did you know that for a restaurant scene when they're in the restaurant later in the film, that Cassavetes had brought in a bunch of studio heads to sit as extras?
No.
So he invited all of these, like, studio execs, come in and be an extra in my film, like sit in this restaurant scene, and then he cut it on purpose.
Right.
He removed all their faces from the final cut.
So he was Cosmo, right?
But he's so delicious in himself and how he just will, like, put a finger in somebody's eye.
Right.
Just be like, what? I don't know.
But it is interesting because these two films, like, I mean, like, they do nothing. I mean, like, you might as well have not made them. Like, just so much to the point that no one even fucking saw them until there starts to do career retrospectives after his death.
Right.
Like, he recuts this in 78 2 years later to make it more palatable for theaters. I can't even imagine why he did that. I mean, like, because at a certain point you have to realize that no one's going to give a shit.
Yeah.
And like, it's not, you're like, okay, so you're 78. So you're past, you're past these gangster stories that have been told that, I mean, hell, you're past Taxi Driver at this point. I mean, like, so it's, I don't know, that genre is well worn and you have nothing to, look, I know that he's a different type of filmmaker, and I'm not saying the story's not worth telling, but is to compete or to go back in or to get money out of a environment that existed for those hyper violent stories with, and again, this movie has nudity, but it's not ever really like it's not really the focus of it all. It's kind of like an afterthought because you're actually just in a strip club, right? I mean, I think how he films women in this, specifically these strippers that is really interesting because it's never glaring, it's never focusing. Like there's one sequence that's really, really good, but when he goes to the health food restaurant and his favorite waitress is there, and she's they have the whole thing about, I could dance for you. And he's like,
yeah, when can I audition for you?
He's like, yeah, you don't want to do that. Yeah. And then she's like, well, okay. And so he brings her in and she's doing this ballet. But when she's when she's putting on the robe, the way that the camera pans down from her face and like the top of her breasts, and then you don't get like what would normally be the shot of, the full frontal nudity, right? You don't get that. It goes down and it's an interesting kind of like stare at her undergarments, but they're kind of like a frilly, kind of fluffy. Like it's not, I don't know, it's not gross in a way. It's kind of artistic. I don't know. I thought that scene was really, really beautiful.
But I think that is sort of the point,
right? Of course,
because and I mean, like, especially for Cosmo, right? So for Cosmo, the nudity is not the point of these acts,
right?
Right? It's the choreography, it's the dance, it's the story, but the customers only care about the boobs, right?
Right.
But I think that is a really kind of intentional aspect on Cassavetes' part of this is how we're going to show this in the way that sort of Cosmo would see it in.
Especially the sequence in the latter part of the film where there's a stripper there that has a mask over her face, and it's like a really grotesque, like kind of like almost like a Leatherface type mask, and she's dancing. I was just like, that's really, really cool looking and kind of weird and scary in a way. It's just
a lot of that is a lot of the stuff in the bar is
the whole stripper act is ridiculous. I mean, the whole Paris sequence is just dumb. I mean, it's fun, but again, like every single stripper has a different costume. Like he's got fake bicycles.
None
and
of it is like, but that's the and notice like Cosmo's always like, I write the shows, I produce the shows, I direct the shows, right?
You've got any complaints?
My club. You got any complaints? Come see me, I'll throw you out on your ass, right? I mean, but it's very much like, him poking fun at himself, but also sort of recognizing what it takes and the kind of suspension of disbelief that it takes to keep doing this stuff and to keep wanting to go on.
Yeah, and the 78 version is a crisper version.
Right.
Right.
Which is why I don't like it. No,
well,
I'm kidding.
It's not, it does cut out. I think there's a version that exists between the two that probably is the perfect mix. There's a Baby Bear version of this that's just right. Because
wait, you mean from Sesame Street or Goldilocks?
From Goldilocks.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I thought you meant like with the delayed R.
Yes. Yeah.
Two grown men have talked about Sesame Street and Veronica Mars today.
But in the 78 version, it almost cuts out too much to get to, like, you're killing the Bookie right at the hour mark. And then it's the whole, like, he does shore up where I think the 76 version gets a little too indulgent is the chase sequence. And I think that's kind of where it loses. I mean, look, if it doesn't grab you in the first 20, it ain't going to grab you in the next. I was like, so if you don't like it in the first 20, you're probably best off just to turn it off and go do something else with your day. But once you get to the chase sequence, after he loses Mort and I forget the character's name who's chasing him. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That part
don't matter.
It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
That part gets a little long in the tooth to you because again, it really doesn't matter and nothing ever comes of it. And that just seems like Cassavetes kind of losing interest in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Until he gets back to until he finds himself again. And it's this, this realization that Cosmo has of like, look, I'm only happy when shit's going bad, or
when I'm pretending to be someone else.
Right. Yeah. And so, I don't even know who I am, but let's go out and put a great show on, kind of thing. Let's find where we're happy and let's go find and put on a great show.
Right. I mean, this is where I start to think about Cassavetes examining, identity in the self and how the self is just a bluff all the time, right? And we're always just trying to figure out who the fuck we are at any given moment, and we're just going to mess it up anyway. So.
Right. I do find it interesting that this film was so, like, just ignored and and again, we talked about how A Woman Under the Influence played for 18 months at theaters, basically because they were just shopping it around. This did not play for more than 2 weeks or maybe even one.
No, it was gone in 7 days.
And so like you can't.
Fact, did you hear this? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
But so people were in the theater. They were upset. They were coming out of the theater yelling at people in line to not go see the movie.
Which seems,
don't go see that.
Like, I get it. In this day, and it's hard to like put your mind back in an era where, well, I can't. Oh, I saw that movie. I can just turn it on again and watch it whenever I want. Or I've got a copy of this at home. I can just watch it whenever I want. To put your mind back in an era, oh, yeah, I remember seeing Cassavetes 4 years ago in Woman Under the Influence, and now I'm going to go see something different. And again, I would imagine that I'm not sure how big of a name Cassavetes really was outside of art house circles or like cinephile circles in the 70s. This is not someone you're going to go and, oh, the new Cassavetes is out, and Ma and Pa Kettle are going to be like, let's load up the truck and get Grandma on there. Right, we're going down to see a killing of a Chinese
about
bookie.
Like the Irish hitman. So wait. I say that, but I also think that there's a point there, because Cassavetes often gets kind of lumped in, or a lot of times in a list of like new Hollywood people. And I don't think he was.
No,
I think he was
not at all. He's not. He is not Spielberg. He's not Lucas. He's not Coppola.
No, he's not Cimino. He's not these guys. I mean, he was doing stuff around the same time.
He's not even Ashby. It's not like
right. But I mean, he's doing something completely different in a different way. I mean, these guys are still working. I think Manola Dargis in an article for the LA Times was basically like, look, this is just the same thing with like rebel clothes on. That's it, right? It's the same business as usual, but now we kind of put a different like name to it. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this idea of new Hollywood is really the idea of, we found a different way to make a lot more money than we had before. Right. These are not, like you said, these are not rebels that are ushering in a new era. We've just stumbled upon a new storytelling,
money-making picture.
Right.
Yeah.
We've stumbled on a somewhat of a formula to allow these types of filmmakers to go out and make bigger budget films that are kind of spectacle films that we had made in the 40s and in the 30s and 40s, and now we've kind of found our way back to it.
Yeah. And I'm willing to admit that I'm probably lionizing Cassavetes a little bit, right?
Sure.
In that I am sort of painting him in my own critical way as a consummate artist, rather than how do I make money with this picture. It's more about how do I make the picture I want to make. And if we make money, cool. But if not, I'll figure something else out.
I mean, it is a better story, right? I mean, if we go according to the Capturing the Freedman story of a young boy trying to keep his parents together, so he made films, right? He fell in love with cereal, so he made films, and his mom was insane, blah, blah, blah. This is a Van Gogh story. This is a guy who's struggling,
and drives himself mad.
Right. And this is the story that we should be championing, and rather than, and in addition to, it's fine. I don't mind it, but I mean, but this is a guy, it does feel like this is a guy who's recognized, I think in his time, but I mean, more so after his death. I asked you the question, and this may be premature to talk about on the podcast, but was Cassavetes inevitable? Was this type of filmmaker going to come along no matter what?
See, and I think so. I mean, because he wasn't new Hollywood, and he wasn't he was actively kind of bucking against the 50s kind of system, right?
Right.
And so he, to me, seems like a bridge between the two, right? And I think to be that bridge, you have to be sort of iconoclastic and be willing to sort of burn everything down and not care, right? I mean, this is a guy that went to the into the actor studio and basically took the piss,
right?
Right? It was just like, I don't fucking care, right? I'm gonna go do my own thing, and what are you gonna do about it? Right?
I do think that it's rare. I do think that it's that this is a guy who was prolific. It was a prolific writer who basically never stopped and never got past the itch. I mean, he basically worked himself into his grave. And so to that end, I mean, I think it's impressive and that it actually happened. But yeah, I agree with you. I think had it not have been him, I do think that there would have been somebody who fight. I mean, like, and maybe, again, it probably wouldn't have been May, but there was somebody like, Nichols or like somebody, along those lines that were in a different, and one of the reason I say it wasn't May was because she had so much heart. I mean, like she could have been Cassavetes with a better financial backing and not, and just having the ability to finance these things herself. But again, also then, but you take those two as a kind of parallel, it would have been easy for Cassavetes to get beat up by this system and to stop after, any one of these films.
Or it would have been easy for him to have just capitulated into the system. Oh,
right.
You want me to make like 12 more Too Late Blues? Cool. All right, I'll do that.
Right.
And there'll be a little personal touch in there, but really it would just be a solid, competent film.
Right. And I think what helped Cassavetes and what pushed him over the edge was his acting ability. Mm-hmm. His everyman look and feel, like his slight build, his ability to fit into costumes, and his the ability for him to have that rough, haggard face, but like still be ridiculously handsome and then piercing and I mean, he's just straight up a good actor, but being able to fill those roles and pull in $100,000 here, $100,000 there, whatever, and to fit into, to be nondescript enough, but also to be bankable enough. I think that really worked in his favor. That allowed him, of course, to fuel the rest of it. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's an interesting topic, but
I also think the difference, like between him and New Hollywood, is that his being labeled, or him being independent, being labeled kind of alternative, even kind of a Les Enfants and terrible or whatever, right? I said that wrong.
It's all right. Our listeners won't know.
they won't care.
Sorry, you dummies out there.
But I think being labeled these things worked against him in the right ways, right? So they worked against him in the studio system where, with the New Hollywood, the sort of rebel thing, they use that as a marketing ploy. And this is why, like I said to you off mic, that there's no more Cassavetes, right? There can't be. There can't be this kind of I'm alternative, I'm independent, because now these are labels that we put on people to sell things, right? Well, do you know where you can watch the best programs that are sort of like anti-capitalist, anti-Amazon Prime programs? On Amazon Prime.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm a Virgo, right? I mean, it's, yeah.
Right. I mean, like, so, okay, you climb in this system and you're like, I'm going to make this thing that's like anti this. And then those corporations are like, cool, we got you.
Right.
Because they know it's going to pull viewers.
Otherwise, you're just Crispin Glover on a street corner playing your weird avant-garde shit.
Right. That nothing. So there, I mean, as much as I love A24 Neon, right?
They're still, right.
Exactly.
They're not Faces Productions, right? I mean, this is,
right. Yeah. I mean, these are quote unquote indie studios who are still rolling in how much cash and.
Right. And I think, you can put things together. I think the barrier to entry is lower, but again, the having the talent and having the storytelling capabilities is much less. I mean, obviously, not what I say that. I mean, it's not what I mean to say. I just think that, Cassavetes being able to focus and having whatever talent he has. I mean, I do think that you're right. I mean, like the idea that if anybody had any sort of modicum of success is going to immediately get snatched up and pulled into this system that's just going to either chew them up or allow them to do what they want to do, but still take, till skim off the top. I think the closest you came to was like something like Kevin Smith doing Red State and trying to like kind of take those movies back. But even then, Cassavetes never worked in the studio system at all. I mean, like, so that would be more of a sense of, well, I've made some movies and I have a little bit of money but that was still financed by Miramax. It's still money that's being poured in, and it's just a matter of like, well, we'll test this out and see what happens to it. So, yeah, an artist, constantly mortgaging their house and like putting everything that they have up against the next thing. No, you're never gonna see that.
But again, I think this, and we've talked about this on past podcasts, but I think this is very much Cassavetes finding a way to eschew this idea of commodification of art. And I know he's working before we kind of really start talking about these ideas and how we're using art to sell everything else. But he's just like, I'm not going to let that happen, whether by happenstance or by intent.
Right.
It's still like, yeah.
And the things that you saw like come after this, and I guess really kind of parallel to this, like where you get George Harrison funding, Holy Grail, or these these films that are smaller that you get someone like Hopper coming up and like they're allowing him to make Easy Rider because they see this. We're coming out of the Hays Code and we see this ability to like tell these countercultural stories by still capitalizing on them.
Well, right,
but I mean that system ends up eating. I mean, like one, Hopper is self-destructive and excuse me, in the worst way, right? And then spends an entire decade not remembering what happened to him because he was, his success led to ridiculous, copious amounts of drug use.
Yeah.
So
especially on, Apocalypse Now, you just see him like, but again, I mean, a term like counterculture being used to sell things,
to sell,
make profit of things. So, good times. You want to move on to opening night?
I do.
Okay.
I do indeed.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. May I really apologize for this long wait and thank you for your patience. We've had a small disturbance and problem backstage, and the curtain will go up in a minute. Thank you.
Was she sober?
I don't know. I don't think so.
You tell her we had search parties out for her, the police, everybody?
I mean, we all know you changed all the lines tonight. Doesn't that tell you something? I mean, don't you say to yourself, Myrtle, maybe I'm not so smart. Maybe Sarah's play has something to say.
You want to be young again, is that it?
Oh, Marty. I seem to have lost the reality of the reality.
How old are you, Myrtle?
But my wife, Lena. This is Virginia. Say hello to Virginia. Shake hands. Come on.
I feel I'm intruding.
My son Vito. You haven't met my son Vito. God damn it, no! You haven't met my son Vito.
What's going on?
Is it the girl that was killed?
What girl?
No.
Have you seen her since she died?
Okay, I have seen her, but not like you think. I mean, I made her up. She's mine. She's my fantasy.
Was she on the stage with you again tonight?
Oh, my God, what are you doing?
Don't worry, Sarah. I'm doing this to myself. Don't you want to touch me? No. Is she dead?
is that you're a delicate, experienced, exciting woman who I find attractive beyond comprehension. A woman who amazes me with a lack of belief in herself.
Be careful, man.
Yes. Mammy, she's crazy.
This is 1977, just a year or two after Bookie. A renowned actress, played by Gina Rowlands, teeters on the edge of a breakdown as she counts down the days toward a big Broadway opening. This is, I have to say, this is a perplexing film to me. and this is where I like it. I love it, but it always takes me, I've seen it a few times, right? But it takes me a minute always to kind of settle in to its tone and its rhythm, right? Once I do, I'm okay, but it always takes me a little bit to kind of like, I don't know, just
this is
feel
like
it.
Cassavetes' Suspiria, or this is like its closest like Italian Gallo film.
This is because the vibe of this is like an artsy horror film, right? And it's such a kind of existential horror, right? I mean, the horrors of being alone, the horrors of aging, right? The horrors of ghosts of the past in a way. But yeah, it's very much like that kind of.
This to me, see, this one gets back to like, to me, where there's a slight dip with Bookie, this gets back to Women Under the Influence range for me.
So because of Rowlands being kind of at the center, or
I think it's a more personal story. I think so. I think this is a story that I think he's more comfortable telling, and I think it's more open for exploration. Whereas Bookie is like, I'm gonna lay myself bare, and this is what I am, and these are the demons that I have. I do think that this
was his Vietnam,
right? I do think that this one is much more interesting, and it's much more interesting the more and more you watch it. This pulls you in, and again, this kind of goes back where there's never a meandering section in this movie.
Right.
It is it is a harrowing experience from A to B, just like Woman Under the Influence was. And I think Rowlands, this is. I mean, even as good as she was so good in Woman. This parallels that role in really kind of. I mean, I think she's just as good in this as she is in Woman.
Well, and I think she shows more range in this.
Yeah,
right?
I agreed.
Yeah, because like in Woman Under the Influence, she's meant to be. Pardon my language, right? But she's meant to be crazy. She's meant to be a little over the top. In this, she's got to go back and forth from being sort of like a nutsy drunk to. A woman really kind of looking introspectively and sort of trying to figure some things out. And I think she's so good in this. Then she has to act in the play that's part of the play.
Right. There's and picking out the meta pieces of it. I mean, obviously this one does it to 11. There's so much to unpack with this movie, but like one of the things that stood out to me while I'm watching this is that you never get a sense that you're off stage. Like when she's in her apartment, it looks like so they're it looks like they're living and breathing in the building in which the play is set. Like when she goes to her apartment, it looks like the set stage and like it's all open and like nothing is
the penthouse,
right?
I mean,
right, yeah. And so it's this woman who has defined herself by this level of beauty, this level of sexuality, this level of of fame and youth, right? And she is now she doesn't believe this in herself. God damn, this movie's so fucking good. Like she doesn't believe this in herself that she's aging, or maybe she does. Maybe she can feel it.
Well, she can't accept it, right?
And so the play that she's been given, her next big break, her next big Broadway show, is an aging woman. And she's coupled with this ghost of her past, this woman who is this 18-year-old fan of hers, which is her, right? I mean, this is who's...
Well, I think it's both literal and metaphorical, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so this fan who unexpectedly dies, which is one of the great Cassavetes scenes, like when she steps out in front of traffic and it's through the scene to the back window, and it's
so good. Yeah.
It's really. That's why it's like, it's almost like it is. It's like Italian horror-esque, really. I mean, it's like, this is types of films that you don't normally see. Like in his scenes that you don't normally see in his films. But, you know, she starts to haunt and really kind of become this, you know, an embodiment of a younger version of Rowland's character. And I don't know, that whole aspect of it, and her like, you know, essentially at the, you know, at one point, you know, beating that ghost and like, and causing, and basically trying to kill it. And then her coming up and being bloodied herself and beating herself. I don't know, that whole aspect of it, of Rowland's really kind of coming and struggling with just not only that, but then her sexuality with every male character in this movie, like the old producer, the director, you know, Cassavetes, you know, Maurice is, you know, her old lover and her co-star at this point.
What a brutal line he delivers to her. You're no longer a woman for me. You're a professional.
Yeah, the dialogue in this is, and you never really know where the dialogue of the play begins and ends, because they break characters so often in the play that's being shown in the movie, and it's so good.
Oh, it's a nesting doll of a movie.
I can't imagine those two like playing off of each. They had to have loved those scenes together, like just to being able to like kind of just one up each other in those scenes.
And I love that. He's not really going to hit you. They're just going to hit you with the fingers, and then the whole like they're like chasing each other. Oh, it's so good. But I think this kind of gives a window into their relationship too. I mean, this is another level of like the meta-ness there is how much of that is like the two of them. Right, sort of showing a little bit of like who they were off stage as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think so too. And of course, she's dealing with alcoholism and coping and self-medicating with coping with all of this stuff, as everyone in her life is either manipulating her, and they're all manipulating her, even when they're, you know, purportedly trying to help her. They're all manipulating her. They take her to a couple of psychics, the different medium, and like she basically poo-poos those almost immediately. But yeah, she struggles with bouts of and you know, seeming insanity and drunkenness and not knowing how to navigate, trying to get her point across, trying to be mansplained to, as she has all these men standing around her, like looking at her while she's, you know, at her dressing table. I just like, of all of the movies that it's crazy to me that this one also dies.
Within a month.
Right.
Yeah.
And they can't, like, it does well overseas, and that makes sense why it does well overseas. But this movie, again, gets no U.S. distribution. Like, they talked about, like, you know, when Cassavetes was alive, someone reached out to him. I think it was the New York Film Festival. After it had showed at MoMA, they reached out to him and said, hey, we want to show opening night. We're going to show it as part of our lost films section. And he's like, fuck that. Like, how can it be lost? I've got a copy of it. Like, you're going to show it as a new film. And it's just, how heartbreaking it must have been to do both of these films. But it's really opening night for me, and have it like kind of getting back to your roots, but really just having it just, I mean, I guess having it be successful overseas is something, but having it die here in the U.S. and literally no one seeing it, and is bonkers to me.
Well, there's no accounting for bad taste. Right? I mean, true. I say that as a joke, but I mean, I don't get it. I think as a Cassavetes fan, right, I don't get it. But just as a movie fan, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand why no one would go see it. Look at the shit we go watch today.
Right.
But and even then, like, but in the 70s, 77, 78, we're going to the theater all the time. You're telling me that people wouldn't watch the, I don't know. I mean, but I love, speaking of that, the opening of this film from the, like, we just see the audience in this in this theater, and you're just like, oh, okay. So, and then of course, like, we get this big applause and everything, but that kind of, again, that level of meta-ness of him commenting on, you know, audiences watching, or like, where are the audiences? Yeah.
Right. I do think there was a little bit of a nod to his supposed improvisational aspect of his scripts as well. Like at the end when they're kind of like jiving together, and she shows up to the final play and she's drunk off of her ass. Like the opening night it's not the opening night of the Broadway show. It's the last night of the show before the show.
Like the preview shows, yeah.
And what I love about this too is because it's such not like what a real play would be. This is Cassavetes being as meta as possible because clearly in a real world, Gina Rowlands would have a understudy. There'd be other people ready to step in. There wouldn't have been all this consternation of like, oh, we've got an actress who won't say her lines correctly.
We've got to find her.
Right. But the last night before the Broadway opening, which again, that would never happen either. And they're not going to immediately open up on Broadway. But the last night before the Broadway opening, they can't find her. They go out and send people out on the streets to look for her. They finally find her and she is blitzed and can't stand up, kind of blitzed. And they decide to fuck it. We're going to put her on. Like, don't help her. Like, let's just get her out there.
What does the stage manager say?
Oh, yeah. I've seen a lot of drunks in my time, but none that could stand up.
But none as drunk as you who could still walk. You're fantastic. He's just like, oh, you're the best alcoholic I've ever met. Well, you're a real professional.
And through all of like the worry about her staying upright and remembering her lines, she actually delivers a powerhouse performance. And of course, then at the end, like you said, none of these films ever really end. This is going to go to Broadway and have the same existential problems that she has now. Right. It's just that she's gotten through one performance.
Right.
Women Under the Influence has gotten through one night. Cassavetes. Well, you don't ever really know what's going to happen in the Bookie, but if Cosmo dies, he dies and the show still goes on. Yeah. And if he doesn't die, the show still goes on. Right. It doesn't really matter whether he dies or not, right?
Well, right. He's only important in his own mind.
Right.
He's not, in the grand scheme of things, none of us are really that important. but what I mean is if he's going to drop dead right there on the street and someone's just going to step over him. We just don't get to see it.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole hell of a lot to say. Again, there's just so much there is a lot to unpack here. It's all pretty self-contained, though. You go from scene to scene. There are some pretty harrowing scenes, like I said, when she beats up the ghost or when she gets into a physical altercation with the ghost. And then and it all happens really really quickly in regards to like transitions, because then she goes directly into you see her with her sunglasses on and she's trying to get into the playwright's suite. And then she beats herself up and bloodies her own face, and they're trying to put makeup on it, and so all of that happens. Do you know who they wanted for the playwright to begin with?
No.
Bette Midler, not Bette Midler. Sorry, Betty Davis.
Betty Davis,
a really really young Bette Midler,
which would have made sense, writing as an older woman.
Right. No, yeah, Betty Davis.
I thought Joan Blondell was really good.
I thought she was really good too. I think it would have been a mistake for Betty Davis to be in that role. I think that's one of the things of the charm. And I think as you see kind of the evolution of Cassavetes' career, I think he gets better at directing and placing non-acting actors, right? These more of these amateur, lesser experienced actors, because the people that are also in the play are still really pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
But they're also not so good that you wouldn't believe that they'd be in that play, right? And I think that kind of speaks to and I think people a lot of people kind of get perturbed with the side speaking characters, like some of the take the father at the wake at the for the actress for the young girl who got killed.
So she goes to the apartment.
The Shiva, is that what it's called?
Shiva.
Yeah, Shiva. Yeah.
She was Jewish, and they're just like,
you shouldn't be here, right? I know who you are.
The father just goes like, you clearly have never had children, right?
but and I'm not saying that particular role in general, but a lot of the extra people that may or may not be professional actors. In fact, he found I forget the actress's name, but he found the woman who plays the young 18-year-old off the street.
Oh yeah.
He just drove by and was like, "Hey, do you want to be in a film?"
And so, speaking of that, John Toole, who was the big guy in the play, he's a Teamster.
Yes, yeah.
First acting role ever. Right. And
he's good.
Oh, he was really good.
Yeah.
And in fact, when Cassavetes died, I guess he wrote to Gina Rowlands and was like, that was like one of the best, times of my life and all this stuff. And he's like, if there's anything ever I can do, I'll, but how cool, right?
I'm really interested, like if Cassavetes had a really good feel for what Second Notion was about. Like the play. That's the play, right?
Second Woman.
I thought it was Second Notion.
Second
Woman. The Second Woman, so it was all about him. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then I completely read that wrong today. But like, was that a fully fleshed out play? Because I find that whole interaction with his kids running around and Gina Rowlands coming up and like his wife kind of like beating the shit out of him.
Yeah.
And then whoever that was in the background, the other guy that was in the background, like
his brother-in-law, the other guy's like brother-in-law. Yeah.
But the interaction between Maurice and Gina, I mean, obviously Cassavetes and Gina, is so good as well. You know what's funny to me too? One of the things I was looking at too is like having all the ridiculous like product placements, like that big bucket of KFC that's out on. Like, what the hell's that all about?
I saw that too. But also wasn't this at a time where some of the fast food was a little bit better quality? Than
I'm sure it
now?
was. I'm sure it
wasn't
was. Yeah.
as sort of like, I don't know, disgusting.
It just seemed funny and out of place. Like these people, like I just feel like all of these. I don't know. I have in my head, especially from like 70s, like Long Island and in Eastern New Yorkers, kind of like this idea of this. We go down to the corner market to get our baguette and we have somebody.
Baguette? Wait, when was the last time you were in Long Island?
No, I mean just when you go to a grocery store, you got a baguette. You got to get a baguette to go out. But like, and they're always making their meals. I just feel like these upper crust, like I feel like it's like a 70s version of American Psycho, where they go home after their 3 hours at work that day. They drink a lot, they smoke a lot. They go to the bar first, they come home and have a cocktail, and then they go out for dinner.
And then they leave their wives.
Right. And they order something, they don't eat it, and they come home and do it all over again. And then what I'm saying by that is that's the life that I want to lead.
Isn't it?
Right.
Isn't it? Where we can walk down to the corner store and buy a baguette.
Right. I want to go
on Long Island.
I want to get off at 3:30 and go down to the piano. I want to go to a Piano Man bar and go and have a drink. Get into like some scuff with somebody.
Someone else in a tie.
Right. Hit on somebody's dame, and then I'm gonna go home.
Say, hey, do you remember me?
Right.
You don't remember me?
Right. You don't remember me.
That's right.
And then I'm gonna talk to my kids for about 5 minutes until they go put to bed, and then the wife and I are gonna go out.
You're gonna smoke a cigarette while you're talking to them.
Right. Yeah. And we're gonna go out and have a key party down the street. Or whatever. I just imagine that's how every 70s day went. I mean, so, and if not, I don't want to know about it. That's just funny.
No, but so speaking of that, I do think it's telling, harrowing, whatever, how she is exploited in this play by all the male kind of characters, how they're all, I mean, the way they all leer at her too. I mean, it's so intentional, this just like ogling and sort of fawning over her, but in a very kind of lusty way, not.
Well, and you're made to believe that Gazzara sleeps with her just to calm her down, right? And like,
because that's all. Going back to Kevin Smith, that's all.
That's all they need, right? That's a good dick in.
A good deep dick.
And Gazzara's wife, who's at one point. Expected to take all of this and also to help her get past her alcoholism or whatever thing that she's going through, and like her like aloofness to the entire situation was like, whatever, this is fucking stupid. I don't even know why I'm here, kind of situation. But like, okay, my husband is banging his actress because, she's off her gourd, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, you're made to believe that this is a woman who doesn't understand her sexuality, and to the point where she uses it as another self-medicating, act.
But this also seems like a theme in Cassavetes' films as well, that I think he really understands that maybe other lesser male directors wouldn't get across. I mean, look at Rowlands in Faces. Look at the character in Too Late Blues. How she's like, the only thing I have is my body. That's all I know how to use, right? And if I'm not that, what am I? So I think this is kind of there throughout it, even in A Woman Under the Influence. I mean, she goes out and she sort of wants attention, and this is how I get attention, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think this is an interesting theme kind of throughout, and how men, are all too often only after that,
right?
Yeah,
yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah,
that was very insightful. I know
that was awesome. So, what did I want to say? Oh, so I think a couple of things. One, Al Rubin shot this. He was the DP on this film. Obviously a producer, Cassavetes' longtime producer. Some of the shots in this movie are, I think, really incredible. And I think something about Rubin is the way he's able to photograph skin, and how it looks, there's one shot where Rowlands is like hanging her head, right? We just get it in profile and her hair is kind of like covering her face. But then, she kind of comes up and the hair goes away and you just see like her cheek and you just want to sort of reach out and touch it. And I'm reaching out to touch Jason's cheek right now. But it just seems so like it's just right there. I don't know. I think it's really a beautiful film. But because of that, I think especially.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I think that a lot of the critics writing about this film always refer to her as an alcoholic or struggling with alcoholism. And I'm not saying she's not. I mean, she clearly is. But she's also clearly using this to combat something else, right? Like you said, self-medicating.
Right.
She's clearly at a kind of mental breaking point, and this is the only way she's able to kind of deal with all this stuff. This is the thing I think we overlook with addicts and alcoholics is why, the reasons why, right? It's not just because it's fun to get high, which, right? But there's something else there. I think for her, it's this idea of aging and not understanding. I think there's more than that, but this idea that she's really struggling with in the play itself, right? I mean, Joan Bondell, the playwright, constantly asks her, how old are you? And she just will never give an answer, right? She never says how old she is in this movie, which I really like, that she just refuses to admit that she might be of an age where she has to examine some of these things.
Right. Roland's character exists. She's the same in Women Under the Influence as she is in this. I mean, she's not. Roland's is a commodity to everyone around her. She's not a real person, right? I mean, like in Women Under the Influence, she's a wife and a caregiver to children, but that's really all she ever is expected to be. And then she's treated with kid gloves because she's fragile. I mean, and from a mental state. In this, she's just like, I mean, Cassavetes is right. She's just a professional. She's just an actress. She's never really even given a name. I mean, like, so it makes sense that the one thing that she constantly wants to go back to and that everyone else ignores and like treats her, almost with either indifference or tries to ghost it out of her is the remembrance of her youth and the youth that so once that obviously metaphor gets killed and gets run over, her trying to like, oh my God, wait a minute, stop, wait, what happened to that? And everyone's like, fuck it, we just want to eat. I don't care.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter, right?
That's such I mean, this happens so early, right? Where we see this young woman get hit by a car and she's the only one who seems
cares
to care
at all.
Right? And everyone else is like, I'm hungry. Come on, like, come on, I'm hungry. I need to go eat. And she's like, I'm not going to go eat. I'm like, you're going to regret it. You're going to regret it.
The restaurants are going to close.
The restaurants are going to close. But yeah, and then, she like looks for the papers the next day or a couple of days later and she finds the story and everyone's just like, just let it go. And she's like, are you fucking serious? Like, I mean, and of course, as the movie goes on, we start to see that metaphorical connection with like the literal death. But yeah, no one else cares. No one else cares what she's going through, right? Get your shit together and do this play. That's all we care about. Right. Yeah. It's really fantastic. The use of colors, I think, are really good in this too. And also Bookie. I mean, the shooting in the bar through gels to depict a certain kind of color is great. But in this one too, just like the use of red in the carpet, the use of red in the hotel rooms. Yeah, I think it's really...
Yeah, Bookie does have a distinct look and feel to it that you don't typically get with the Cassavetes film, or at least you hadn't up until that point anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I mean... Go ahead.
I think this is what's also so great about Cassavetes is that we get a film like Faces, and then we get a film like Opening Night, which I think is much more controlled, right? A much more controlled. But then you get Bookie, which is this meandering, right? I mean, and again, that's one reason I like it, the aimlessness of that film. But they're distinct. All three are distinct shooting styles. And so even if we call Cassavetes an auteur, his sort of framing and use of camera movements are not necessarily cohesive throughout. Right. Which I also think is where he's going, look, this form doesn't fit this content. I've got to change something up here. Which I think is always, yeah.
I just imagine being in the audience trying to watch Bookie for the first time and like, wait a minute, what the fuck? Like, okay, there were two women who were clearly fighting and we didn't see any of that on screen.
I know.
Like he gets shot. We just see the gun. There's no blood at all. We do see a couple of guys take a bullet and fall backwards, but it's so quick.
We see Cosmo kind of flinch at one point as he's running.
Right.
But again, it's adrenaline. I don't know. It's another reason that I think Cassavetes fits so well with sort of like the European directors is he doesn't feel like he has to show you every single thing that happens, right? It doesn't matter how we got from here to here. We just did. Okay, things happen that we don't need to sort of see. We don't have to hold your hand through everything. Right? Some of these other things we'll take our time with, but right, we're also going to cut and move on.
Right.
I don't know. I really dig that about his approach. Right?
Yeah.
So, anyway,
and we're almost done.
Anything else about either of these two films?
No, I don't think so. Okay. I think we covered it pretty well, if I do say so myself.
Jason is patting himself on the back right now. Did you do any pairings with this one?
I didn't, but I'm more happy to listen to if you did.
Well, I'll give you some sort of pairings, I think, for these. So this is a solo recommended if you like.
I may throw some in.
Okay,
if I think it's anything off the cuff.
So for Real Women Have Curves, I thought a good pairing, a good kind of recommendation would be Gillian Robespierre's Obvious Child, starring Jenny Slate. It's not a direct one-to-one kind of analog, but I think the vibes are there, right? The kind of female empowerment, the taking a taboo subject as kind of the inciting event of this story and letting this woman make her decision and saying, I'm going to make this decision. But the way she deals with it, I think is a really nice.
Yeah. And it's not told from an aspect of kind of in your face,
right?
Fuck you. This is what I'm going to do kind of thing. Right. It doesn't, it's just more of a matter of like, I mean, there's a little bit of that, but it's not this idea of like me against the world or I'm going to prove a point. I'm just going to do this for myself. Right.
Yeah. So that was my pick for Curves. For Bookie, I thought about the 2014 film Hyena, directed by Gerard Johnson. And again, it's a vibes connection of a man who is sort of under the thumb of some mobsters and is willing to do things he doesn't really want to do to kind of stay afloat. Again, he's a corrupt cop, but he's also, more clueless than he thinks he is. This is a grittier, darker film than Bookie with an even more cynical view of the world. But that's why I like it. So, have you seen that?
I have not seen that. No,
it's not great, but it's interesting. I mean, it's good. Right?
Well, I like hyenas. I mean, so it's basically about hyenas.
It's just like laughing the whole time.
Right.
It's the hyenas from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Excellent. It's their story.
They just have resorted to sort of racketeering, and drugs. So. Okay, all right. For opening night, I think also though, the sort of obvious choice for Bookie is Uncut Gems.
Yeah. Look, the Safdies are like the anti-Cassavetes, though. I mean, in a certain, like there's, whereas Cassavetes shows you nothing, the Safdies will show you everything. And I'm not saying that I enjoy those films, but Jesus Christ, like there's just a different level of like tiredness.
Hyperkineticism.
Yeah. right after those
movies. There's a different sort of energy, right? Both have energy, but there's a different sort of energy there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's those types. I mean, like this isn't a kind of a well-worn territory where people are, constantly self-destructive. I mean, you talk about like Bad Lieutenant and things like that, where these men are always just. There's a really, really fun Canadian film. Not to say fun, it's interesting, I guess. It's not necessarily like haha hilarious. But have you ever seen Owning Mahoney with Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar vibe where this guy is constantly, he's a gambling addict and he works for a bank and he's making accounts where he can take out loans against so he can gamble. And this John Hurt is a owner of a casino who flies him out because he's a big whale, but he's nobody. And yeah, that's when Hoffman is like looking at the line. It's like, I'm going to bet all the American League home teams. I'm going to bet all the National League away teams just for this today. I don't give a shit. I don't even give a shit what they are. Like, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's not about winning. It's just about making the bet. Right. And that's kind of what the Bookie, the storyline is too. It's like, and Uncut Gems as well is like, it's really just about the action. I don't really care if I win or lose. Yeah. It's just about being at the table.
For me, the action is the juice.
The action is the juice. R.I.P. Tom Sizemore.
For opening night, I would recommend Mulholland Drive.
Okay.
Right? David Lynch film. Again, another film about sort of the trials and tribulations and nefarious goings on around Hollywood. Right? Which I think in some respects, opening night is very much a movie about making movies.
There was an Altman film with Neve Campbell where she was
The Company.
Like the company.
Yeah.
She's
a dancer.
Yeah. That'd be my.
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah. But I haven't seen that in a while.
I think I saw it when it came out, and I don't think I've seen it since then.
And Terrence Stamp is in it, right? Yep.
Yeah.
And Neve Campbell's dating a chef, right? So she gets to go home to her date the studio, and he's got this like great like meal made for her. Man, that's the life. Instead, I work all day, go home, and I have to cook too. It's just like,
look, it's not the 70s anymore.
Man, I walk in the door. What's for dinner? I just got home. So,
right.
I just made my very petite partner sound like she's like 8 feet tall. Motherfucker, feed me.
She's Carrie from these fucking movies.
Yeah. Her name is Flo.
I do. I mean, that lament, like, he just seems so like suited to be in his suite of actors, and like, had you had him in, I don't necessarily know, like, he doesn't work in Husbands, and I don't know if he works before then either, but like having him as a foil in Woman of the Influence or I think he's just such a good guy to like throw a scene around. Like, he would have worked in Faces or Shadows, like as a guy just to kind of like throw something to, and have him there. You can't use him in Cassell's role in like Faces or anything, but I don't know. There's just something about that guy. He's so good in this. Like, I just feel like Cassavetes was just like, what I found. I want to use this guy wherever I can.
And he must have seen him in Kubrick's work.
Yeah,
Kubrick's early works. But I mean, have you seen his like picture on IMDb, his profile picture?
Yes,
it's so good. It's so ghoulish, but also so sort of funny and sad at the same time. I don't know. And his hair.
Have you watched World's Greatest Sinner?
No.
It's not an easy watch. It's not I mean, it's an interesting like little side note, and the Zappa song. He's a winner as a sinner. Like, it's a banger of a song. It's a little rough around the edges, and like, there's something like it's very much like a student film that this guy took forever to put together. But there's a website out there called rarefilm.net, I think, that has a whole bunch of like these kind of quote unquote lost films, and World's Greatest Sinner is out there. You can watch it out there.
Okay.
Not great quality, of course. It was never like a 4K restoration of the World's Greatest Sinner because like 4 people have seen it. But
speaking of sort of these side guys, Mr. Sophistication was a screenwriter. Worked with Tennessee Williams on a bunch of stuff. Which makes a lot of sense, actually.
Right.
I mean, so, all right, fantastic. Anything else on these patches of Cassavetes?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm sure we could go on for days, but no, I'm good.
Yeah, but
at this point,
I mean, I need
sustenance
rest after watching those. No, I just need to sort of like recharge, because again, like these are emotionally draining films. I mean, I watch these things and I'm like, and again, I like Bookie more than you, and I think we both really love opening night. But man, they take a toll.
Yeah.
I mean, even going, even Shadows takes a toll, and it's a different kind of beast than these.
Yeah, I'm glad A Woman Under the Influence and Opening Night didn't fall back to back. I'm glad we had a little bit of separation between those two.
Some kind of like genre intervention, right? Yeah, but man.
And I think we're going into a similar duo of films.
Very much so.
So like this, like Bookie equals Gloria, and Love's.
Yep. And Love Stream is more like Opening Night. I
Yeah.
mean, in terms of like vibe and stuff. Yeah. Tell the people what we're going to do next time.
We are going to watch a Hulu film called No One Will Save You, or something along those lines, with Caitlin Dever, who didn't star in Everyone Wants Some. We're going to talk about Gloria, the John Cassavetes crime film with Gina Rowlands, as well as Love Streams. And we're going to touch upon his last film, Big Trouble, which is a film that he took over because Peter Falk asked him to, and it was kind of a loose remake of Double Indemnity. And
the writer of that film initially directed it, and they fired him, right?
Right. Yeah, that is true. Yeah. And that's it. And that's what we'll talk about next time.
Yeah. But we're not going to end on Big Trouble. We're going to end on Love Streams, and we're going to exit very much like Cassavetes did by playing the jukebox.
And then we'll get to decide what we do next. And then we can kind of like maybe like wash ourselves and like kind of shed this heaviness.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we'll dive right back into something else.
We all know how much I like light fare.
Right. I don't know if there's what can we do? Like, we tackle the Ernest movies or
no. Let's go back in the vault for Disney. I'm kidding.
Yeah. We'll do Three Caballeros, Song of the South.
I think we'll do Bambi. We'll do Dumbo.
We'll
do Fox and the Hound. Yeah.
Their live action remakes of this.
Yeah.
Did you hear that who the most and speaking of fucking like IP driven horseshit, and who Scorsese came out, I guess I ruined this surprise if you hadn't heard, who's been tapped to do the next 2 Bond movies?
No. Who?
Christopher Oppenheimer Nolan is supposed to be. Yeah. They've decided that he can put butts in seats, and that of course,
who's going to be the next Bond? We don't know yet, do we?
Aaron Taylor Johnson is the front runner.
Sure? Oh, there's the front runner, but yeah, I'm still holding out hope for Idris Elba.
It won't. Elba's too old at this point.
Look.
Like I'm with you.
Elba,
I'm with you.
Look, there's never been a hunkier Bond if he becomes Bond, or a rougher, tumble Bond than like Stringer Bell as Bond. Fuck yeah, give me that, man.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, Aaron Taylor Johnson seems fine, I guess. I don't. There's nothing exciting about like, and I mean, also he's kind of heavily entrenched into comic book movies at this point, so it seems a little bit like you're kind of. I mean, I guess whatever. It isn't just not a guy. So, but yeah, I mean, like going back into, and like it's just funny because the whole GQ article that with Scorsese just came out, and he was like, I got one more movie in me, and like we got to save cinema, and we got to start fighting back against these IP driven films, and then but he also, and I guess everyone was giving, I don't know, the shade a little bit because he was like, watch Nolan films, and they were like, well, he did Batman films. Not that I expect an 80-year-old man to be up on, like, I'm sure he ignores all that shit. He spends all of his time making movies. I can't imagine him like really trying to like.
But if he knows about these comic book movies, and then it's like, oh, Nolan, how do you then be like, well, he did all the Batman stuff, and him just go, well, that doesn't count. He did it in a different. I mean,
have you seen the picture of the GQ article?
No.
It is a close up of Scorsese's face, but like a wild like 4K close. And like, I mean, not that or Scorsese's, but it's like you can count the hairs that are coming on his nose, kind of. It's like crazy close.
Why
it's just like, why didn't you airbrush those out? Like, it's just, or like take a step back. I like Scorsese. He's a fine looking old man, but
sure,
I mean,
but like, why do? Yeah, back up. But also, like, look, he's starting to. I tend to agree with him on the like. I'm not a big Marvel or comic book like fan or IP. Like, I hate this stuff, right? I do. But at the same time, if he's out there sort of shouting at clouds, talking about how we need to save cinema, and then going this direction, I mean,
yeah, I think it's one of those things that it's weird to me that he doesn't really have the historical context to it all. Because I mean, like, I know it's been a couple of decades, right? Since 2008 when Iron Man came out or something along those lines. And so it's been 15, 16 years that we've had a kind of a every year we're getting 2 of these things, and I get it. But I mean, like, but you can already see that the backlash is I mean, that the audience for this is starting to tire. And I mean, like, I guess you got to take some solace in thinking that, Barbie and Oppenheimer. I know Barbie's IP, but I mean, these movies are doing extremely well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I do get his. I mean, obviously, I don't think it's killing cinema. I think cinema is eating its own tail. I don't think that.
I think there are bigger problems than just the Marvel comic book movies, right? Or even IP. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's studios that are trying to go directly to streamers and stream themselves and cutting out the windows. I mean, it's not the theaters are going to have to figure out something on their own, and it's not going to be the movies that put that get people in. It's a reduction of the amount of money that these entities are having to bring in, and that's really what the end of the day is going to be.
Theaters are going to turn themselves into Crazy Horse East, Crazy Horse West, Crazy Horse North, and Crazy Horse South. And look, Mr. Sophistication's going to have to come in. That's what's going to save cinema.
Right.
That's why the people are coming, right, to see Mr. Sophistication.
If they can figure out what song's on, then they'll be
I can't give you anything but love, baby.
All right, well, that does it for us today.
Until next time, thank you for listening.
And keep screaming.
Let's get the show on the road. Hey, on. I can't give you anything but love, baby.
Excuse me, sir, but I'm new here.
She certainly is.
Please, I have no money, no place to eat, no place to sleep.
Well, this must be the place.
You have been listening to Why Does the Wilhelm Scream with your hosts, Brock and Jason. If you liked today's episode, do us a favor and rate, review, and subscribe in whatever application you use to consume podcasts these days. You can reach us by visiting whydoesthewilhelmscream.com. If you are in the DFW area, we would love to see you at a Fort Worth Film Club event. You can learn more about those and find a full schedule at fortworthfilmclub.com. And you can learn about my foundation and how we are trying to foster the next generation of film lovers at realhousefoundation.org. That's REEL housefoundation.org. Till next time,